When we measure extreme height, the standard baseline is sea level. By that metric, the summit of Mount Everest, standing at 8,848 meters, is universally recognized as the absolute highest point on the planet. But the Earth is not a perfect sphere. This diagram shows a cross-section of the planet, revealing how the Earth bulges at the equator due to its rotation. That physical bulge means mountains located near the center of the globe are pushed further out into the vacuum of space than the Himalayas. If you measure from the very core of the planet, the peak of Everest sits 6,382,414 meters away. Mount Kilimanjaro sits at 6,384,134 meters. That specific 2-kilometer difference makes the African volcano a geographic anomaly. Depending on your baseline, the roof of Africa reaches further into the cosmos than any other point on Earth. To understand how a structure this massive formed completely alone, you have to look deep beneath the East African rift. Here, the Nubian and Somalian tectonic plates are actively pulling the African continent in two. This deep crustal tension created a massive geological vacuum. Roughly 1 million years ago, that void triggered a violent eruption of glowing magma straight through the surface. The initial magma flow created a broad, gently sloping volcano known as Shira. Once its molten core emptied, the immense structure collapsed in on itself, leaving behind a massive caldera. Subsequent eruptions birthed a second peak called Mawenzi. Today, it stands as a heavily weathered ridge of jagged, broken rock. Finally, a third volcanic cone, Kibo, tore through the crust. This final eruption swallowed the remnants of the others, building the towering, dormant giant we see today. Because it was built by 3 localized, overlapping volcanic events, rather than the collision of continental plates, Kilimanjaro exists completely isolated from any mountain range. It stands alone as the tallest freestanding mountain on the planet. Scaling its slopes exposes you to 5 distinct, stacked climate zones. Hiking from the base to the summit subjects the human body to the exact same atmospheric changes as walking from the equator to the North Pole. The lowest of these zones is a dense, warm tropical rainforest. For at least 500 years, this lush, cultivated land has been the home of the indigenous Chagga people. The Chagga harness the nutrient-rich volcanic soil and the steady runoff of glacial water from the peak, engineering a complex network of irrigation channels. These systems feed expansive coffee and banana plantations year-round. The violent tectonic forces that ripped the continent apart ultimately engineered a massive ecological engine, providing a hyper-fertile foundation for a complex human civilization to thrive in its shadow. Pushing past the rainforest, the environment rapidly degrades into oxygen-starved moorland and barren alpine desert. Up here, the extreme altitude begins to inflict a brutal physical toll on the human body. In 1889, German explorer Hans Meyer and Austrian alpinist Ludwig Percheller mounted a massive expedition to conquer these upper slopes. Their survival through the punishing lower and middle zones relied almost entirely on their local guide, Muini Amani, who managed the camps and kept the men alive. The final push required navigating sheer ice walls, severe acute mountain sickness, and hostile Arctic storms to finally breach the rim of the Kibo crater. Upon reaching the 5,895-meter summit, Meyer planted a flag and claimed the highest point in Africa for the German Empire, officially naming it Kaiser Wilhelm Peak. With a single declaration, the mountain's identity was forcefully rewritten. The source of life for the Chagga people had been converted into a towering physical trophy of European colonial conquest. Decades later, in 1961, the political landscape of East Africa fractured. Tanzania broke free from British colonial rule, establishing itself as a sovereign nation. To mark the first anniversary of their independence, the new republic dispatched Army officer Alex Nyrenda on a grueling ascent. He battled freezing storms and deep snow to reach the crater rim. Standing at the absolute top of the continent, Nyrenda planted the new nation's flag and lit a kerosene lamp known as the Uhuru torch. The colonial title was erased, and the summit was permanently renamed Uhuru Peak, the Swahili word for freedom. This physical ascent acted as the ultimate geopolitical reclamation. The newly formed nation had turned the continent's most hostile peak into an enduring beacon of African independence. Today, roughly 50,000 climbers travel to Tanzania every year to test their endurance against the thin air and Arctic cold of that exact same summit. But the environment at the top is collapsing. The 10,000-year-old glaciers that have crowned the volcano for millennia are rapidly melting under the stress of global climate shifts. Since they were first mapped in 1912, these massive ice fields have shrunk by 91%. Current scientific projections estimate they will vanish entirely by the year 2060. Mount Kilimanjaro operates on a ticking clock. It stands as a fragile monument to freedom, and we are likely the final generation that will ever have the privilege of witnessing its majestic icy crown.